morning, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, and welcome to this week's Weekly Energy Boost. My name is Elisheva, and I am here this lovely Monday morning with Daniel Naor.
Hello, guys.
And we are super pumped to talk about something I don't know if we've ever talked about before, which is unusual for us on the Weekly Energy Boost. Every week, we try to provide our listeners with the most powerful and practical wisdom and tools to help navigate the coming 7 days. We base the topic on the energy as dictated to us by the wisdom of Kabbalah. So we search through and try and find the most practical and powerful tools to give our listeners to help them, which inevitably ends up helping them 365. So we're talking today about breaking bad belief systems. And belief systems has come up almost in every episode because when you really break down the human existence, the human condition, our belief systems are really the lens through which we experience reality. And when you look at those belief systems, if you really examine them, and sometimes it helps to show them to someone else as well, that they're not necessarily rooted in reality. They may be rooted in experiences that we went through as a child and we didn't have the tools to translate them into what they really were. We learn in Kabbalah that sometimes those belief systems stem from previous lifetimes where we experienced traumas or we received scars from experiences that are so profound that they carry over into previous lifetimes, and we need to work through them in a new body, in a new scenario with perhaps even more tools and more awareness. But regardless, there isn't a single person on the planet that is exempt from the burden of belief systems. And it's if you want to understand spirituality from a intellectual point of view, spirituality is really the process of uncovering, understanding, and uprooting negative belief systems, taking the broken and misperceptions of how we interact with reality and replacing them with truth, with integrity, with positive and fruitful interpretations of life.
Mm-hmm. I would agree to that.
I give you the mic, Daniel Naor.
So this week's energy is also a lot about sight and how we see things. Right?
Exactly.
And like you were saying, we're always seeing things from a certain perspective, from a certain lens, oftentimes tainted by experiences, beliefs that we've accumulated, right? So I think our discussion, what we want to do is like explore what are those beliefs are and where they come from, but also how to transcend that, right? How to have a different perspective, how to see things differently. But I think our starting point, a good place to start, is by actually taking a step back and to realize that I see things in a unique way. And there are advantages and disadvantages. But I would like to start by talking about the advantages, actually, before we're talking about the limitations and how to transcend them. I want to offer a different perspective on it, which I think is interesting, the advantage of fully embracing my perspective. Because the positive aspect of that is the reality that I see reality in a very unique way that no one else sees and experiences it. And so there's also a certain responsibility in that. Meaning when I fully embrace, when I realize that I'm the only one that perceives it this way, there's a certain responsibility that I need to do something about it. Let's say I see something, I said, oh, maybe I should say something because I notice something is off here. But maybe like a voice said, no, if there was something wrong with it.
Have you been listening to my inner thoughts? I do that like 20 times a day.
I guess if there was something wrong with it, someone would say something. But I cannot compare myself to others because others don't see things the way I do, right? So I guess I can also relate to it that sometimes when we do get the courage and the guts to speak up or to say things, they're like, we might be surprised you might be surprised. You might be having people around you say, oh, we actually haven't seen it this way. We haven't thought about it this way. Or the silly example, right? But you go past by and you see a piece of paper on the floors. And I guess it's, like I'm the one that sees it. So pick it up in a certain, that's the kind of the responsibility in a sense. And because I deal also with a lot of modalities with families and beliefs inherited from ancestors and family, I would like to offer this example too. Let's talk about siblings, okay? So siblings, let's say 3 or 4 siblings, and they're all born into the same family. And I guess everybody can relate to that, either for yourself or people. The truth is that even though they're all born into the same family, the experience that the firstborn will have is a completely different one from the second, third, and fourth born, right? It's like everyone sees things from their perspective, and their perspective are their experiences, is the history, are their events, is the biases that they're born, like all of it, right? But it also has an advantage, meaning I can, when I share in a certain way, I can allow people to see my perspective, right? So there's a lot about communication, obviously, and openness, but in collaboration, that we need everyone's point of view. There's a certain advantage and responsibility in my uniqueness and expressing it or speaking up or sharing it. And of course, we'll talk about the disadvantages. I cannot get hung up or stuck on and saying the way I see things is the only way. Of course, it requires a certain openness, but this is the place I wanted to start with, the advantage of that.
It's not only an advantage, it's like there is a divine purpose behind individuality. And we don't want to negate that.
Right.
So, there's the danger of, it's one thing to look at somebody and say, I love how you think. And I do. I sit here sometimes in this seat behind this mic and I listen to my colleagues and I'm like, wow, I love how you think. I love what you say. I feel like that's one of the great things about doing this, is that I get to hear so much powerful and profound wisdom. And there's a part of me that says, I wish I said that, or I wish I thought that first, and I not in the sense that I want to be Daniel or Daniel needs to be me or any version of that. But the reality is that because of our unique perspectives, by let's say it the opposite way, by smothering our uniqueness, we're actually depriving the world of something.
Exactly.
So it's important, as we talk about breaking those limiting belief systems and limiting perspectives, we make sure that we don't, like wash over the positive, unique perspectives that we have.
Right. And you can see it also like the diversity, right? In different, I'm thinking about the different Kabbalists throughout the ages. And they weren't all the same. Many of them had very conflicting ideas or seemingly conflicting perspectives, right? Like certain Kabbalists, their way was like, you need to be very tough with your students and your audience, and you need to speak the truth and like call them on their stuff, right? And there were certain Kabbalists that their approach and their perspective was completely different. They say like, no, mercy, love, patience, give them their time. It's like mercy versus judgment, right? So there's no good or bad, right and wrong. It's just a different perspective, right? And allowing the different perspective to exist and to honor them and to see their purpose is a beautiful thing. It's actually what founder of the Kabbalah Centre, Rav Ashak, says the only way for growth to happen is allowing different of opinions to exist and coexist and to communicate in that way.
I think that...
Tell us what you think. Tell us what... I'm curious and open to hear your perspective.
Well, I'm as a parent, and I bring that into the show maybe a little bit too much, but it really is a chunk of my identity right now. I try to absorb as much perspective as I can. I know that my parents did the best that they could with me, and I'm doing the best that I can with my kids. And one of the things that I've learned, which I think is a really powerful perspective shift that's helped me a lot when you talk about mercy, that's what the word triggered a reminder for me, is that when we look at other individuals, even walking down the street, you know, you may see somebody who dresses differently than you, and you have this glimmer, you know, it's such a quick thought of, look at them, you know, or like, how can they dress? How could they leave the house like that? And you don't dwell on it. It's just sort of like, it's a judgment call. It's somebody somewhere told you, or you began to believe that it's not proper to dress that way, or that's an embarrassing thing to put on. So you don't even realize that you're having it.
Right.
Even more so when dealing with people who are close with you, who trigger you, who know you well, they're let's say your inner circle. The tendency to have those judgmental thoughts is even worse or harder. I had a conversation with a colleague yesterday. We're working on a project that's really amazing. And she had she had a whole story about what everybody else was thinking and saying about her. Now, is it true? I'm guessing not, just from what I know about everybody. But her experience in life has shown her that she is excluded or ostracized or blamed for different things. People leave her out of conversations. People, you know, throw her under the bus kind of thing. And she believes it. So her reality continues to look like that, even though it's not actually happening. So one of the tools that I learned, and I brought up the parenting thing because I learned it from a parenting person, but I'm using it on everybody and everything. It definitely helps me deal with my kids, but even more so, it helps me realign my beliefs with my higher self. And the question to ask, and I will give credit where credit is due, her name is Dr. Becky, and she's awesome, and I quoted her before on the show. She says, when you look at somebody behaving badly, your kid is having a meltdown, or you're disagreeing with your partner, or you hear something really difficult from another person, you ask yourself, what's the most generous interpretation of what they're saying or what they're doing? Most generous interpretation, not my language, totally hers. So what is that really saying? How can I look at what's happening with the best possible outlook? So for me, when I think about parenting, I think of, you know, my kid is having a meltdown. The most generous interpretation of the meltdown is they want attention. They're craving love.
Right.
Is it convenient for me now? No. Is it triggering me now? Yes. Do I wish it would go away really quickly? Yes. But having those thoughts doesn't help resolve it. Looking at my child and saying, you know what? They're just saying they need more love and attention from me. When my spouse comes home and he's had a rough day and he's sort of slamming doors, or, you know, whatever, he doesn't actually, but whatever let's say he has his own way of acting out, I can retaliate. I can slam doors, proverbial doors too, or I can look at him and say, well, what's the most generous interpretation of his behavior? Which to me is, how can I be the most merciful right now? How can I look through the eyes of love right now at what this person is doing or saying? And then I'm able to tune into the lack from which they're operating. They're not malicious. I mean, the lady walking down the street whose outfit I don't approve of, she didn't wake up this morning and say, I'm going to piss her off. I'm going to awaken her childhood issues with my outfit today. No, but the choice and the realization that when I look through the lenses of judgment, I'm punishing myself. She doesn't know what I'm thinking about her. She doesn't lose no sweat off her back. It's me who's contributing to the negative energy. And I feel so fluffy saying negative energy, but it's like, at the end of the day, why am I in such a bad mood? Because I look through judgmental eyes all day.
Yeah.
I allowed myself to, basically, I give my energy to the woman walking down the street. And I give my energy to, you know, the wrong kind of energy to my kid who's having a meltdown, because all they really want is a hug right now. And I'm busy being annoyed with it. So part of the shift we're trying to create this week is for us to all realize that we get to decide how we look at things. We get to decide how our experiences and our, sometimes it's our parents that program us to think about people a certain way or to think about situations in a certain way. I met with somebody the other day, and I'll stop talking in a second, that she was raised to think that having a lot of money is bad. Mm-hmm. So even though she wants to be more comfortable and wants to have more nice things, there is a belief inside that's also pushing those opportunities away from her.
Right.
So I really want to understand in a more moment-to-moment level, how do we identify and deprogram ourselves from, does she really believe that money is bad? That's actually my question. Mm-hmm. Does she really believe she wants to have nice things? She wants to live a comfortable life. She wants to feel secure and all those things that having money can bring. What does she really believe, that it's good or it's bad? Right. Dr. Daniel Noor.
Right. I love the point that you bring up and the perspective and the lens that we're looking at things. And I actually want to throw here maybe some tools as well that is not just a one-time use. I think this is something that requires constant practice. And this constant practice, one of the tools that I really like is, there's different ways to call it. I like to call it sort of like emptying myself, right? Because we're all full of experiences and beliefs and biases and like all the beautiful examples that you gave, Elisheva. And so to access a higher perspective, to access a more truthful perspective, is the first step is to empty ourselves. And it's not an easy thing to do. It's simple, like we often say, simple, not easy. But it can be trained with practice, and that's the beautiful thing. So I'll give an example. You watch someone, or you listen to someone talk. And the beautiful thing is that we have opportunities for that on a daily basis so many times if we pay attention to it. You listen to someone talk. What are you thinking about? Are you really listening? Are you judging? Are you right? There all these thoughts and all these distractions. So there is information that we can access from our brain that has stored experiences and beliefs and all of the above. And that's usually where we're making the calculations, and that's where we're making judgment and making decisions or giving advice, or right? It's all mostly coming from the brain. But the beautiful thing is when we pause and we realize there's a higher perspective, there is even information that I can access that is beyond that limited mind with the experiences and the limitations and those beliefs. How do I access that? The first step is to quiet myself, to empty myself, to acknowledge, okay, those thoughts are coming, but I let them pass like a train in a train station, right? They come in, they come out. And this is something that can be trained. It's not just like deep meditation that can be trained, but even active listening, right? When I actively listen, and I make it a practice to empty myself, to access that empty space. And when I train myself to do that, you might be surprised what perspective you suddenly start to see when you quiet the noise and these common voices. Suddenly you start to hear different things that are not, they're not coming from your brain. They're not coming from you. They are coming from a higher place, that from that place you can access a different perspective. So now you're not just seeing that person, what's wrong with them, but like you were saying, you can see their pain, right? You can feel them in a different way. You can relate to them in a different way, right? With an open heart. I would love to read to you a story, if that's okay with you.
I would love that.
Because when I was thinking about it, this is one of my favorite stories that really, for me, demonstrate, especially when we're in a place which I often times find myself in, all of us to some degree. We have people that come to us that seeking solutions or answers, right? We're in a place, whether it's our family, our kids, our co-workers, friends, family. And here's a beautiful thing. So someone asked an old teacher, how do you manage to help other people? Many people come to you asking for advice, and they leave feeling better, even though you know little of their affairs. And he says, he answers him, a teacher resists appearance and illusion. Meaning, oftentimes it starts with understanding that what we see, there's a big chunk of it is just outward appearance and illusion of my own mind. Like, we need to assume that we always have a bias. We always are limited in our perspective. So if we know that we are blind, we have a chance to remove the blindfolds. If we don't know that we're blind and we're just confidently just jumping into conclusions, like, of course we'll make mistakes, and of course our view will be narrow. So he says, and I love this, he finds his center. So a teacher resists appearance and illusion. He finds his center and waits for a helpful word. As a ship with sails raised waits to catch the wind, when someone comes seeking help, the teacher is waiting where the visitor himself or herself must go. And if an answer comes, it comes for both of them, for both are listeners. And then he says, waiting at the center is effortless.
What does that mean? That
means, for me, what it means, like emptying ourselves or waiting at the center, right? Being centered in. And another word for that is being present, right? When someone talks, like really being present with myself in quiet place, right? Waiting at the center is effortless, meaning we don't need to go with our racing minds that tries to find the answer, that tries to find the solution, right? Like if you're coming to help someone, so many times our mind is racing, saying, what can I say? What should I say to help them? What is it? It's like, resist that. Resist that appearance, that illusions that you need to find the answer for them right now. Resist the temptation to speak your mind right now and jump into conclusions, whether this way or that way. Resist, pause, right? And then when we find that center place and we wait, like it comes effortless, meaning suddenly I see things differently. It's like a flash. Right? Because it's not coming from my brain, it's coming from, in Kabbalah we learn from the higher realms, the emanations, the sfirot, the different stages of the worlds and the light of the Creator, without getting technical on where it's come from, but it's coming from a higher plane. It's coming from a higher plane of existence, and suddenly I get an answer, or suddenly I get an insight that I would never have gotten, would have trusted just my limited mind and my biases and my perspective.
Well, what you describe is what a lot of people, the way that a lot of people describe intuition and channeling, and people who are we call it in Kabbalah divine inspiration, Ruach HaKodesh, like how do you suddenly know the solution or the answer? It's many times the way that it's divinely inspired is if it's not connected to what you were thinking about. So if you clear your thoughts and you're not thinking, you find that empty space within, then you know that whatever you end up finding there, you didn't put there.
Right.
So that to me, it's funny because sometimes my husband will ask me whether he's helping somebody or he needs wrestling with something and he's looking for the answer, the solution. He tells me, can you just channel it? And the funny thing is that I can when it has nothing to do with me.
Right.
But when it has something to do with me, my own, I'm going to use the word agenda. I don't want to, it's not that I have an ulterior motive, but it's like my own involvement clouds my perspective.
Right.
So I tell him I can't because it affects me, But sometimes when I do it, I'm kind of like, whoa, where did that come from? Because he's like, oh my God, where did that come from? And it's just because it's like I really clear that the noise, there's no interference. And when I'm connected to it, I feel like I can't cut that last tether of interference to really be pure and get that pure message.
Yeah. I'd like to offer another quick tool that you reminded me we were speaking is, again, we're talking about accessing different and higher perspective. And this is something that I like to use oftentimes for myself is how do we access a bigger perspective? It's like I know my perspective is limited, like we said before. So one of the easiest ways is really to ask the Creator, right? To ask this higher force, this higher intelligence, show me what it looks like from your perspective. And that showing, right? And because we talk a lot about this week's energy is about sight and seeing, right? How can I see from the creator's perspective? Because that is the highest perspective there is, right? And so, yeah, there is a point of where it's helpful maybe to get other people's point of view and diversify and reading different books and being exposed to different opinions, just so that I can expand my view and challenge myself and keep an open mind. But the truth is, the ultimate perspective is not from people. It's the highest truth, which is the light of the Creator. So I give you an example. Sometimes I feel like we're saying it a lot on the show. I mention it a lot. People can have the tendency to be very harsh with themselves, right? So like guilt and blame and shame and all of these things. And that's a perspective, right? We're saying like, oh, I'm so terrible, or like, oh, I messed this up, or oh, I'm so low and I'm so this and I'm so that. That's also a perspective, right? And sometimes like a very, very quick and easy tool to shift that is like saying, is that how the Creator sees you? Do you think the Creator is placing so much judgment on you right now? And for me, this pausing, raising this question, it like shifts everything. It's like, no. So where is it coming from? Well, it's self-imposed. Well, how is it serving me? Well, not well at all. So why not to drop that?
It's like puppets. I hear puppets, like, why do you do it? It doesn't serve me, so why do you do it? That's really the conversation. It's the two.
But this is for me such a good, quick, instant shift in saying, well, what's the Creator's perspective and understanding of this situation right now, or of my process right now? And of course the answer is, well, the Creator is endlessly merciful with me. The Creator still loves me. The Creator oftentimes made me fall and make these mistakes, and in the Creator's eyes, I'm still perfect. So I like that perspective, and you know what, I can adopt that. I can choose to adopt that.
You remind me of something my husband shared with me not long ago. The founder of the Kabbalah Centre, Rav Ashlag, wrote amazing, we quote him all the time on Weekly Energy Boost, and
hashtag Rav Ashlag.
Yeah. So he wrote a letter to one of his students giving the student personal advice, but now we have all these letters, and there's such diamonds there. So in one of the letters he said that really our spiritual work is to have that energy, what you spoke about. How does the Creator see me? Mm-hmm. Pure love, pure mercy, kindness, goodness, gentleness, compassion, 90% of the time. The only time to take out the ledger and see what I could have done better and have that self-reflection, it's like a tiny part of the day. And we're wasting the day. We're wasting opportunities by being hard. Like there's no revelation of light in that, except when it's done constructively for the sake of growing. And the Kabbalists say to do it at the end of the day, right? Before you go to sleep, to take stock. But that's it. Right. And it's not take stock and lose sleep over it. Mm-hmm. It's almost like purge, let it all, figure it all out, what you could do better tomorrow, and then let it go. And so to me, that's also a really important reminder of the fact that we're here. We teach this in the classes. We say it on the podcast. It's in every book, article, everything that the Kabbalists teach, is that we are here to be like the Creator. What that means is that we're here to be pure love. Right. And it's such a, when I think about my own to-do list every day, right? I have a schedule. I meet with people. I work on projects. I pick up the kids, take the kids, cook the kids. I did not mean to say that. Cook for the kids. I have a home to take care of, work to do. Da, da.
Or do you sometimes feel like you wish you could cook kids?
No. I eat a pretty vegetarian diet, if I'm honest. Very, very little non-vegetarian consumption in personally. Humans do not look delicious. Although I bite my kids, I do not eat them. Full disclosure. But it's so easy. My point is, it's so easy to fall to the external, the 1%. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. We're here to grow in as creators in our own life. And the creator creates from love. Mm-hmm. So sometimes I ask myself, you were offered a perspective shift questions a second ago. One of the questions I ask is, how would I do this if I did it out of love?
I love that.
How would I do this? Or how would I be speaking? How would I treat this if I was doing it out of love? Because there is so much obligation. I'm usually the practical one on the show. There's so much we do out of responsibility, out of obligation, because we signed up for it. Like there's all those slogans we have, and some of them are very true and valid. You can't just not take care of your family because you're not in the mood. You know, it's got to be there's certain, you have to take care of your body. There's certain obligations you have by being a human being on planet Earth. At the same time, what energy you do it with is not obvious. It's not for granted. It's not it's not, what's the right word? I'm missing this word. It's not obvious that you're coming from a place of love, even when you're caring for your loved ones. There are a lot of people, we've had comments and questions from listeners that are, for example, taking care of an elderly parent. They're the caregiver. Mm-hmm. And of course, it's out of love as a child, but some of it is a big burden.
Right.
So the reason I ask that, or that question, how would I do this if I was doing it from a place of love, isn't for the other person. It's for me. Mm-hmm. Because what kind of energy am I bringing? What is my perspective? How am I showing up when I'm doing it out of obligation?
Right.
It's a chore. And whoever's receiving it or benefiting from it isn't going to receive it but that's not why that's not why I'm changing my perspective. I'm changing my perspective because a day full of me fulfilling obligation feels very different than a day full of me loving.
Oh yeah. I love that. I love that perspective. And I will add to that. So you give the example of the energy that we put in. And one example is the energy of love. And going back to what we said before, we all have our unique perspective, but like you were saying, we also have our unique qualities and we have our unique light, as we call it, right? It's not just a perspective, but we have our unique qualities or our essence, right? Even on a deeper note, Kabbalistically speaking, each and every one of us, we have the root of our soul. So the root of our soul comes from, Kabbalistically speaking, the collective vessel, what its metaphors is for Adam and Eve. We're all part of that collective vessel. And everyone comes from a different place from that collective vessel, right? So one of the Kabbalists says that, like, for instance, like the great thinkers of this world and the philosophers come from the head of Adam and Eve, right? And the athletes and the runners, they're coming from the legs from Adam and Eve. So it's metaphorically speaking, but also true that in a sense that we all have the root of our soul, which is our truest essence, right? Like some people are more filled with joy and humor, and their obligation is to express that in whatever it is that they're doing, because that's how they express their unique light in this world, right? And so generally we're all coming from love, right? But also to tune in to find in my to-do list and my obligations and everything that I'm required or that I want to do, how am I not just getting things done, like you were saying, but how am I putting my unique touch, my essence into what I'm doing? Because then again, if we're not, then we're depriving the world and the people around us of our unique light. So I may take care of someone, but maybe my essence is really like humorous and joyful and fun. And so there's a reason why I'm imbued with these qualities. And the reason why I got them is they belong to the root of my soul. And also I'm meant to live life with it, to serve with it, and to express it.
Like to lead with it. It's not by the way, that's your flag. That's you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so interesting.
Yeah.
And we have this voice inside that tells us you don't matter, or it's not a big deal, or no one's going to notice. And it's really important this week to see past or see through that illusion, because that's not true. That's a lie. And we didn't talk about it today, but many times we talk on the Weekly Energy Boost about the force that that aims to prevent us, doesn't really aim, challenges us to shine even brighter. We call that force the opponent.
Mm-hmm.
And the opponent, that is, I would say, if you would look at the spiritual anatomy of a human being, that force called the opponent is there for us to resist, right? It's not there for us to give into, yet because we're not aware of it, we think it's us and we give into it. So when you look at something like, why it's not worth it, nobody's going to notice, I'm not that big of a deal, it's not important, to understand that voice is there to be overridden.
Mm-hmm.
That's really, I think, the force itself focuses on how you can be making you feel alone, separate, distinct, not contributing to the greater whole, and also alone and isolated. So whenever you have those thoughts of, it's not that important, diminishing your light, recognize that voice is not you. It's lying. It's not true. It's not you, and it's not true. And from that space to actually discover what is the opposite, because what ends up happening is that you replace that thought with the opposite. It is important. I am worth it. It does make a difference. I do make a difference. And the illusion is then your opponent can come in and say, well, prove it to me. When's the last time you made a difference? Mm-hmm. And that goes back to Daniel's point before about, I don't see the whole truth. I am projecting what I see. I don't want to judge a book by its cover. I don't want to lose the perspective or lose the goal, which really is for me to act more like the light, for me to be more of my true, express my root, express my true essence.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's so much, I guess a lot about this week has to do with, and beyond this week in life, has to do with knowing that we don't know, right? And knowing, like I mentioned before, knowing that we're blind and we don't see. And sometimes we're not supposed to, right? Sometimes the view is blocked for a reason. Sometimes there are certain things we're not supposed to know, to see. And that's also good to know our limits. Like sometimes we're trying too hard to figure out things, right? We're like, well, where does that come from? Like, why am I this way? Why am I? And there's a time and place to figure things out and understand their root. And sometimes, but when we're forcing it too much, sometimes we need to leave things as they are, right? Like some of the work that I did personally on myself that led me to a certain discovery was certain things in my past, in my family, and in the history that the pattern came about of like guilt and certain like lack of like ambition moving forward in life. And I worked with someone together and we're like trying to, and we got to a point where, you know what? We don't need to know. We just need to know it's there. We don't need to dig any further. Like there's something there that happened. We don't even know. It's like, I don't need to try too hard, right? So sometimes just accepting the fact that I don't see, but I know there's something there, and trusting that the universe or the creator will reveal it to me when I need it, right? It's also like a certain relief or peace of mind to say like, I don't need to force to see sometimes, right? Yeah. It's okay to not know and not to see at times.
It's important to remember, because sometimes we think we're doing something wrong because we can't figure it out.
Yeah.
Right? Like, or either I'm wrong about it or I'm doing something wrong or off, and that's why I'm not being given that clarity, and it's not true.
Right.
More not true.
Yeah.
Daniel, thank you for being on again.
Thank you.
I wanted to end this week's episode with reading something from our teacher, Karen Berg. I picked it before knowing exactly what we were going to talk about, so you'll see it's interesting. It's interesting, so listen up. Hearken thine ears. The power of these nudges to see the laws of cause and effect and how it plays... The power of Re'eh, which is this week's energy, nudges us to see the law of cause and effect, and how it plays out in our lives. The system is there operating whether we recognize it or not. Inside of us still lies the power of love that once ignited will improve our lives and the world as a whole. We can lose footing on our spiritual path and not see the benefits in being kind to each other. Perhaps for many years, ruthlessness, greed, and treating others unfairly has worked. But the time comes when that energy comes back to us and we begin to see a change is needed. We come to see that it is in our own best interest to treat others with love, human dignity, and the way we wish to be treated. I have always found it fascinating that there is no matching Zohar portion for this week, as if we are being encouraged by the Creator to search and to find the answers within. For within we find the most important treasures and answers, if only we are open to seeing that they are there. In your meditations this week, take the journey from the world without to the world within. Find a time and space where you can be alone and undisturbed. Sit down and close your eyes and take a deep breath. As you breathe, hear the sound of your breath and your beating heart. Inside there is the energy of the Creator. You are from His essence. Become aware of your power and your great capacity to love. There is no end to your capabilities and potential. There is no limit to the love that can emanate from your being. You can see the power you possess to create the life of your dreams and any future you wish. You see the light that shines within and its power to help others and ultimately yourself in the process. You can see that love is all there is, all that matters, and all that is needed to create a truly blessed life.
Wow. Mic drop.
So
nothing to add to this.
But that's kind of the point, is that, we knew what the topic was. We, on the Weekly Energy Boost, that were unscripted. We don't know how it's going to play out. Daniel had some things he wanted to share. I thought of some things, and here's Karen Berg writing this in 2018.
I could really feel Karen's energy as you were reading it. That was beautiful.
So there you have it, folks. You can find the full article. I'll link it in the bio at weeklyenergyboost.com. No, sorry. I will link it at our Instagram bio if you want to find it there. On weeklyenergyboost.com, you can find out more about the work that Daniel and his team do in the realm of tikkun healing, as well as a few other things we think are cool and interesting for our listeners to check out. You can follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and everywhere podcasts are found. We'd love for you to rate and review if you're enjoying what you're listening to. Keep sharing it. The more people we reach, the more light is revealed in the world.
Share, share, share.
Share, share, share. Thank you again, Daniel.
Thanks, Elisheva.
And we'll see you next time on the Weekly Energy Boost.
Bye-bye.